Okay, we're in the chapter called Pilul, and section Gimel, page 198 in English. The form is what counts. There is another matter here. That's obvious to all those who are thinking people, thinking intelligent life. That the definition of everything is its form, its chumrot. Definition thing is its form and not its substance. So what does that mean? If you go up to a table and you ask your friend, what is this that I'm looking at? Right? By the way, we're learning for Shira's son, for Kenneth ben Shira Tzipora. You won't say this is a piece of wood. Even though in truth that what's sitting in front of you is a piece of wood. Rather, you're not going to refer to it as a piece of wood. You're going to refer to it by way of its functionality that you're using it. It's a table. And this is everything we look at, right? I can tell you I'm looking at a piece of plastic, but it's a bottle, it's a water bottle. And you know what it is because you're looking at it and you recognize it's a water bottle. The animal who sees the table won't think like that. They won't see a table. Just a pile of wood on top of each other, layered on top of each other. It's 4 sticks and a flat board. That's what an animal will observe. So the Yesod Dvarim, and the idea behind this is that an individual from their own intellectual capacity does not grasp the essence of an object. Rather, we think of something, how do I relate to it? Right? When we see an object, to us, we think about it, what does it do to me? This is a table. I sit and I eat at the table, right? Another example. If I see a car, we don't think of it like just a color. Even though it's a green car, I'm not going to think, well, this is a green thing. Rather, your eyes are seeing green. Even an animal goes deeper than just the color. We'll see a wall of a car made of a door made of metal. Even though the metal is concealed by a layer of paint. But man who understands that they're looking at a car, and the so when you and I look at an object, we start to think about, well, what role does this object play? This is a table. I sit at the table, I eat at the table, right? I see a car. I look at what a car does. This is a vehicle that brings me from point A to point B. When an animal sees a car, they'll see a clump of metal. They'll see things that look like rubber wheels. They'll wonder what to do with it. Maybe this is an object they can scratch their itchy fur against if they have fleas. But basically, we look at things the way it functions in our lives. Right? It has utility to us. And after this introduction, we're at the bottom of 199. So, let's say as someone who thinks truthfully and looks at the sun and the sky and starts to say, and asks, what is that thing in the sky, that fiery sphere that is providing light and heat? This is a creature that reveals the glory of heaven. Because that's, if you peel back the layers of the sun, beyond all of its other benefits, it is an object which reveals Kvod Shamayim. That if you really want to get down to the bottom of the truth, the role of the sun is to reveal the Kvod Shamayim. It reveals the glory of Hashem in this world. What the rabbi said, Moshe who looked into a clear channel of light. When we talk about Moshe's prophecy, we refer to Moshe as being prophetic through an aspaklaria ha'me'ira, that Moshe was able to see God through a clear lens. So that means, what does that mean? He saw everything in this world through a clear lens. The nearest Shemasha Amr Chazal, top of page 200, and that which the rabbi said, Moshe mentioned, we talking about aspaklaria ha'me'ira, ain't there rak ha'dark v'yatom nevuah. Everything he saw, Moshe saw with absolute clarity. What does it mean? So, you look behind the layers, you see God. That everything in this world was an expression of God's cover. Right? The two, lo midi, if we had a lens of truth on our eyes, then everything we look at in this world, what would it really see? If you really see what's behind the engine, right? What's behind the curtain, you really see HaKadosh Baruch. That is the challenge of a great Navi, a great prophet. Someone who can see the truth of God's hand behind everything. Right? Something good happens, you win the lottery, thank God. Something bad happens, what do? What does the Gemara Baruch say? We thank God. We acknowledge God when bad happens. We answer, sun, this is the moon, if you look up in the sky and say that's the sun, that's the moon, then it's no different than looking at a car and saying that's a clump of metal. That's Adam kigush basar, and you look at man, you say that's a clump of flesh and bones. But you don't see the soul. So if you take a superficial glance at anything in this world, then ultimately in the end, it's a falsehood. It's not seeing the depth of who a person is. If you look at a person, you say, what is this? And you describe, well, it's about 40 kilo of 90 pounds of flesh and bones. Yeah. Is that falsehood? Is it sheker? Ishamayim? The end, it's the worst sheker of all. It's nonsense. Is it ivrom, what blindness? Is it tishtush? What a muddled mind. Kain mamash misha omer ze eitz ze even. It's like someone who looks at a table and says that's a piece of wood. It's like someone who looks at a stone sculpture and says this is a rock. The building is a rock. Haim ein bo neshama? Haim ein lo tzura? Does it not have a purpose? Mo huzo miticho adam nikvad b'yedei nafsho b'yedei gufo kacha never miticho kol chevetz abriya he kavod shemayim docha zu agdar mitzvah. That's why when we take an overly scientific and medical approach to everything in the world, well, we're just matter, and we're just a bunch of cells, right? Well, you're not wrong, but it's a superficial way to understand what a human being is. You're looking at a soul. You know what the difference is? It's funny, you go to a computer, and computers have all this knowledge in the world, right? Incredibly knowledgeable. You look at a human being, you say, well, it's a very smart person. So why do we stand up for a human being who's bright and is a great scholar or a great Talmud Chacham or a tzaddik, but you don't stand up for an older person, but you don't stand up for a computer which has more knowledge on one little thumb drive than any human being has in his lifetime? The answer is that all it is a database. The human being is a soul. And we stand up for a soul. We stand up for someone who's deeper than just a clump of information or material objects gathered together into a specific form. And anyone who can't look at an object with greater depth is missing Kvod Shamayim, is missing the fact that God is the engine behind everything in the world. right? Minekach. As a result, for this reason, bottom of page 200. Kol asher poretz mitoch libo shel adam v'otom regaim amitiyim. Anything that bursts from a person's heart in those moments when you're praying, nikra tefila b'loshen mishpat. It's called tefila, which is language of judgment. Shekol avodah v'leiv mitziyat b'kasha o shevach o shar chalkei tefila and bikar priya karta emet lamita. Is an expression of truth. It's the fruit of recognizing the ultimate truth. Now, that's why tefillah, pilul, is like an assessment of truth, because every encounter with God is not just a bunch of words exchanged, but in fact it is a really profound and deep connection with the source of all, with God. And now we're up to the last section of this chapter, Daled, where it is taking advice from Hashem, page 201. You see where I am? All right, I'll do a spotlight. This is where we're up to. Okay. Brachos daf chavtet. The rabbis teach us, when you go out on your way, hamelech bekonech v'tzei. When you go out, himalech rather, consult your maker and go. What does it mean, himalech bekonech? Consult your maker v'tzei. Amar Yaakov. Yaakov says, Amar Rav Chista zu tfilas haderech. That means that before you travel, you ever say the prayer when you go on in a car ride or airplane ride? You make a tfilas haderech, right? So you're supposed to recite the tfilas haderech before you go anywhere. Near the Yeshkan Remez Nifla, we have a wondrous hint in all of this. Why does the rabbis call the prayer, the wayfarer's prayer, the traveling prayer that you say whenever you go on the path, why do they call that himalech? Consult your maker. What is that talking about? How is that a consultation with Hashem? And odiaitz, which would mean to get advice, to take advice from God. Ma'achar Talmid Mashgiach Hagon, Hatzadik Rav Yerucham Levovitz, Zecher Tzadik Kosh Levracha. Rav Yerucham Levovitz was from the Mir Yeshiva, right? And Rav Yerucham Mashgiach Lemir said She'echam Mebechirei Talmidim Mashgiach Hagon Tzadik Rav Yerucham Levovitz She'echam Mebechirei Talmidim Haitzach Me'ezah Siva L'Nsol L'Ir B'Gol Vorsa. One of the students had to travel to the great city of Warsaw. Erez Kama Mechavtza V'Yischonein Latzeis Laderach, and he packed up a few of his belongings and he prepared for his journey. Prior to leaving the yeshiva, he needed to receive a blessing from the mashgiach for going on his journey. It reminds me of someone. There was once a what do you call it? A woman who was traveling, whose son was traveling to Israel, and came to Rav Soloveitchik and said, "My son's going to Israel. I'll have to learn. Can he have a bracha?" So Rav Soloveitchik was not a Hasidic Rebbe. He wasn't a bracha Rebbe. So he said to the student, he said, "You should have a safe flight." Anyway, so the student went to the Mashgiach of the Mir of Yerucham Levovitz and went into his room. His room was on an upper story. And he had to go up a number of stairs, a flight of stairs, to get into his inner room. And when he got there to the first step, he stopped for a moment. And he reviewed in his mind, what will I say to Mashgiach? I have to explain that because of the following reasons, X, Y, and Z, I have to travel to Warsaw. Allah od kama madrigot. He went up several other steps. The netzar shov, and he stopped again. What should I say to Mashgiach? Here are the reasons that I'm going to Warsaw. He stopped a number of times. Got to the door of the Mashgiach Luchani. He stopped himself. He turned around and he went down the steps. And he went back to his room and he returned his suitcase and he unpacked his suitcase because now he understood he didn't really have to go into town. So he thought about it. He was going to get a bracha. By the time he wanted to really think about what he wanted to ask the Rav for, he realized that it wasn't necessary. The whole journey was not necessary at all. How wondrous is this very simple, basic story? Since he tried to prepare his words, the words that he was going to share with this great man, and he knew that he would have to be careful because this person was a great man, and the man would be critical of every word. So this brought him to the point that he now had to test the truth on his own. He immediately now saw the flaws. There were flaws in the truthfulness of his reasons. And he didn't have to enter, at that point, the rabbi's room. So sometimes realizing that you have an important conversation is enough to prepare you to have the conversation with yourself already. If you think about it, there could be no better muscle for preparing for prayer than this, right? So, sorry, Joyce, were you going to say something? I'm not sure.
No, not now.
Okay. So we're about to go and daven, right? And what are we saying? I'm going to talk before God. I better prepare my words in advance. You actually thought about that. Like you were going to speak, if you were going to have an important meeting in your place of work, first thing you do is you map out you'd at least make an outline of your words. You make an outline of what it is you want to say. You rehearse it in advance, you know it in your head, and then by the time it came out, it would be fluent. Tefillah is tremendous, has a tremendous side benefit, aside from the fact that tefillah is tefillah. What does it mean? You should consult your maker, the person who stands before God, that this is the God of truth. Tefillah is an expression of a moment of truth awareness, self-awareness, which is the outgrowth of prayer. And like that story of the Bachor from the Mir, who told the story about him, about which we told the story about him. If his Rebbe had not been present, he would have to say, God, I need to go to Warsaw. Ana atzlach darchi, make my journey successful. Shani tzarach sham, being ploni, because I have to be there for this reason. And he would stand for God. He'd say, God, Elokim emet. Medaber, he told him, speak to Hashem. I need X, Y, and Z. I need success. And once you start to articulate that need, right away, you'd experience realization that, do I really need to go to that city? Do I really need to be there? Imagine you're davening, a young woman is davening for a shidduch, and she's about to go on a date with the guy of her dreams, and she's davening and so much, and she cannot peel herself away from the sitter. And she's saying, help me be successful on the date. Let me say the right things. He should find me charming. He should also see good in me. And the shidduch should go, well, I really want to marry this guy. And she's davening. What does she realize in the middle of the tefillah? Why do I want to daven him? Why do I want to marry him? Well, I don't really like that aspect. I'm not really into this, and this is not for me. And she starts to realize that this person she's been davening for is not the right person for her. The mela, her tefillah changes. Tefillah, therefore, is a reflexive activity. It's a mirror being held up to us. It causes us to question our motives, to question why we're doing something in the first place. What is tefillah? Is receiving direct advice, direct counsel from God, because there's an opportunity to hold the mirror up to your own face and to ask whether indeed the things you are asking for are necessary for your growth physically and spiritually. And also when it comes to things that you need. Tefillah is an examination. There is a dagash, how important it is, how much emphasis we're going to place on certain items. Like a person who needs to buy a certain garment. I need to buy a new hat. I need to buy a new sports jacket. What do I do when I want to go shopping? I go to 3 or 4 stores, to choose the best one at the best price. That's how we shop. Sometimes online. Sometimes you check dozens and dozens of garments with great precision to select the best one. But if you daven before selecting a garment, when you go and make a request from God, that it's going to be specifically the color, that the garment I find should be the color and the shape and the price that I want. What would happen is, if you really prayed, and the garment would be revealed before your eyes. For had it not been, right? Rather, when it comes to God, so God is not so excited about your request. I think I need my right now. My daughter is negotiating buying a certain winter coat she really wants. Trying to convince my mother-in-law to buy it for her. Okay, and this is what she's insistent she wants. My mother-in-law said, "Well, is this really a good coat? It's very expensive, designer coat. What about the down, the goose down count versus the regular down feather? Is it really warm or is it just a pretty coat? Will it last? Is it a good company? Is it worth the purchase?" She wants to know, is what my daughter wants for her purchase, is this really what's good for her? Imagine everything we want on a whim we ask God for. But ultimately, it's not really a good thing, because maybe God doesn't want to give it to us, and maybe we're forcing his hand to give us something that's terrible for us. Imagine you begged Hashem to have a certain marriage partner and you realize that was the worst choice for you. Rather, you want to ask God to show you what it is that's good for your soul, what it is you need for your growth. I don't want the best shirt that I like. I want the shirt that's going to be best for me. And then you glance at it with a perspective that is founded in truth. It's a glance of the truth. And how wondrous. And think about what one of the masters of the avoda said. Masters of avoda means people who know tefillah, they know prayer. If you're embarrassed before God to ask for it, then you don't need it. That's consult your maker. And then then go. First, decide whether this is something that you would be proud to ask Hashem for. And then you begin to speak to him. What a great imagery for preparing for prayer. Suppose you're just walking into davening and deciding on the moment what it is you want. You're walking up the steps. And as you take each step, the meditation that we should be having is, okay, what am I asking for? How am I going to ask Hashem for this? And do I need it? And how is it going to benefit me? Why do I want it? If you could do that, by the time you get up the stairs, it should be very clear what it is you need, and God should be more than willing to give it to you. That's the secret of successful prayer. Any questions? Okay. So we're up to page 200 and page 204, and we're going to introduce Tachanunim this week, and we're just going to introduce it with the first paragraph, and then we're gonna stop and we'll continue next time. Again, we still have, yeah.
I'm sorry, we just finished page 203 in the English.
Yes.
So are we starting this next?
So yeah, we're going to start Tachanunim right now, and then we're going to actually continue at the beginning of Tachanunim next week.
Oh, okay.
We have like 3 more minutes. I don't mind
Okay.
doing a shorter share. I just want to introduce the next piece.
Oh, okay.
So just so we should go back, what we've covered so far in this Sefer, covered a lot of it actually. We've covered Shav'ah, Tza'akah, Na'akah, hysterical outcry, wordless scream, groaning, Rina, which is singing, Pegia, relentlessly entreating before God, Kriya, calling to God, Nipul, falling down before God, Pilul, prayer. We now have left Tachanunim, Chiloi, Amida, and Itur, and that makes up the 10 expressions. So 1, 2, 3, 4 expressions left, and then afterwards there's some concluding sections about the nature of prayer and various other articles that he has about tefillah. Okay, so Tachanunim. I begged for grace from Hashem. Et Chanan el Hashem. Who said these words? I begged for grace from Hashem. Those are the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. Chinon hu echad l'shon tefillah. It's one of the expressions of prayer. To beg. K'moshe nilman bet Chanan el Hashem. Amru Chazal shebikesh Moshe matnat chinam. Rashi tells us there in that parsha that Moshe asked for a free gift. Hu sheyesh levakit v'kadosh baruch hu kol tzarachav me'otzar gadol she'en kamo hu otzar matnat chinam. That Moshe was asking for something that was unlike anything else in the treasury. He was asking for a free gift. Moshe needed a matana because at this point he couldn't have any other way to connect. And we will continue with this piece next time as we start Tachanunim again next week. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll talk a little later. And everyone should be well. Hopefully live next week at the shul or Emma's. We'll decide.
Everyone be well.
Thank you,
Yes, everyone
Rabbi.
stay safe.
Thank you,
Stay safe and
Rabbi.
healthy.
Be
Take care.
well.
Be well.